I'm taking all the inheritance. As a husband, it's my natural right since we're married. Maybe I should buy a mansion. My husband and his mother are incredibly obsessed with money. They are trying to take not only from me but also from my father's inheritance. Why do I have to hand over the wealth my father built to these people? I will never forgive them and won't let things go their way. My name is Susan. I am 44 years old and have been married for 20 years. I lead a busy life balancing housework and my job. My husband Tony is 2 years older than me at 46, works at a supermarket near the station. I met him when I was a university student working part-time at the supermarket where he worked. We started dating somewhat casually, and I married him when I was 24. We live with our son Howard, who just started university this spring. I have a fulfilling job, and despite being busy, I enjoy my days. However, one thing troubles me. It's Tony's reckless spending. He is free to spend the money we earn however he wants. But he mercilessly demands more when it runs out. The quality of our family life drops when the three of us are together. Susan, I ran out of pocket money this month. Could you add about $200 in my wallet? My husband demands more pocket money every month. Again? It should have been enough. What are you spending so much on? Shut up, a man has various social obligations. Whenever I show a bit of resistance, my husband immediately raises his voice. It's because you insisted on sending Howard to university. Exactly, Susan. There was no need for more than a high school education like Tony. Or what? You don't want Howard to end up like Tony because you went to university yourself? My mother-in-law corners me with her sarcastic comments. It's because Howard wants to become a lawyer. You agreed with it too. I didn't think it would cost this much. Then my father-in-law said, Susan, why not have your father pay for everything? He lives in such a mansion. He wouldn't hesitate to pay for his dear grandson's college fees. I thought you cared about your grandson too. But I remained silent because there was no point in saying it. It always comes down to money. I am glad Howard wasn't home at such a time. He doesn't think highly of his grandparents, and when he knows they are coming, he makes sure to go out. It's always like this. They know my father runs a company and lives in a large house, so they try to get money out of me. One day, while I was preparing dinner, Howard told me something shocking. Mom, Dad's cheating. I saw him. He was walking into a hotel arm in arm with another woman. I never expected such a report from my son. I felt more dismayed than angry. That made me realize there was no love left. Just divorce him, Mom. I'll work part-time. It's comforting to know my son feels the same way. Thank you, Howard. But let's talk to your father first. You don't have to worry about anything. Even if we get divorced, I'm still working. And on the night I decided to confront him about it. Suddenly my husband came home with his parents. Father, Mother, what brings you here all of a sudden? Then they entered the living room and said, I was thinking of doing a little filial piety and taking my parents up for a trip to Florida. Could you prepare about $5,000? More demands for money. And this time, a significant amount. The in-laws, meanwhile, were grinning at me. There's no way I have that kind of money. If you don't have it, ask your father. It's unfair that your parents live in a mansion and we live in a rental apartment. He came at me with nonsense. I thought, enough of this, and said, Aren't you cheating, by the way? My husband and his parents froze. It's better if they hear it together, so I proceeded as planned. I don't know what you're talking about. Why would I cheat? Do you have any proof? My husband was clearly flustered. Someone saw you looking cozy with a woman entering a hotel. Anyone could say that. Bring the person who saw it. Well, I hesitated because I didn't want his anger to turn towards Howard. Susan, even if it's true, forgive a cheat or two. It's normal for men. You're the wife, so no need to get upset. I wasn't upset, and I never expected my mother-in-law, a woman, to condone cheating. But hurry up with the money for the Florida trip. Right, we've already booked it, my father-in-law chimed in. It's a done deal, Susan. Do what you're told. My husband quickly tries to change the subject when it's inconvenient for him. I can no longer deal with these people. I've decided to cut ties. We're getting a divorce. I spoke in a calm tone. What are you saying? You can't decide this on your own. If you insist on divorcing, I'll take your family's mansion as compensation. While we were arguing, my cell phone rang. It was from my uncle. He's my father's brother, and they still often drink together. Is that you, Susan? Your father suddenly lost consciousness and collapsed. He's been taken to the hospital by ambulance. The condition is still unclear, but can you come right away? I quickly agreed and explained the situation to my husband and in-laws before rushing to the hospital. Uncle, how is my father? For now, he's sleeping. There isn't an immediate danger to his life, but the situation doesn't look too good. I was a bit relieved since I had been bracing for the worst. My father is 67 years old. It wouldn't be surprising if something happened due to his age. My father took over the company from my grandfather and worked tirelessly. Although he now lives a comfortable life, there were times right after he took over the company when it was struggling so much that we might have had to sell the large house my grandfather had built. He managed to turn things around. My mother passed away from an illness when I was in middle school. But my father never remarried and raised me on his own. My father is irreplaceable to me. It seems he won't wake up today, so I chatted a little with my uncle before heading home. A few days later, I received a call that my father had woken up, and Howard and I went to visit him. Oh, Susan, Howard, sorry to worry you. Father looked much better than I expected. Howard, how is university going?
Yeah.
It's fun, and I'm studying hard. Father was happy to see Howard. However, when Howard stepped away for a moment, Susan, even if something happens to me, I've left everything at the company to my subordinates. So you don't have to worry about anything. As for the house, I interrupted my father. Dad, don't say silly things. Just focus on getting better. You don't need to worry about that now. Right, my father replied with a gentle, somewhat sad smile. Later, the attending physician called me in and told me that my father's condition was quite serious. It must have been due to overexertion over the years. On the way home, I couldn't stop crying. A few days later, my father passed away. That night, I cried so much my eyelids swelled. Howard staying by my side was my only comfort. However, as my father's only child, there were last duties I had to fulfill. I began preparing for the funeral with a resolute heart. The funeral was held at my family home, and many mourners attended. I truly realized my father's greatness. I was so busy attending to the mourners that I had no time to grieve. Howard helped as best as he could. But my husband did nothing and just played with his smartphone. With help from relatives and my father's colleagues, we managed to get through the funeral smoothly. And as I was cleaning up, my in-laws hurried over. Father, Mother, thank you for today. As I thanked them, they said, Susan, that's all fine and well, but what a splendid house as always. My mother-in-law seemed once again impressed by the size of my family home.
Ha!
I was too tired to find words. Susan, is it true that this house could sell for $3 million? Now came an insensitive question from my father-in-law. I dodged the question. Well, who knows? It's not my house. Quickly, my mother-in-law interjected. Susan, you didn't have any siblings, right? No, what about it? I responded sharply. Oh, just asking. After hearing this, my in-laws, satisfied, left with my husband. After some time, all the memorial services were finished, and I finally got a moment to breathe. As I was tidying up the morning clothes at home, my parents are coming over now. What? Why are they coming? I felt down, thinking it was about money again. They don't need a reason to come, they're my parents. We'll discuss the details when they arrive, so just wait. A few minutes later, my in-laws arrived, smirking as they sat on the sofa. Then my husband said, Hey, Susan, when are we moving? When we do, my parents will live with us. It's a waste for just the three of us to live in such a big house. What are you suddenly talking about? We are getting a divorce. Despite the chaos with my father, my decision to divorce had not changed. Oh come on, that topic again? I was wrong before. I got a bit heated. But I'm not cheating and I don't want to divorce. Don't joke with me. I raised my voice. Now, both of you. Married couples share property, so it's not good to keep it all to yourself. My father-in-law grinned, spouting nonsensical things. A wife should listen to her husband, my mother-in-law agreed. You're planning to monopolize the inheritance, aren't you? I'll take all of it. As a husband, it's my natural right. Susan, if you don't want to live with us, giving us the inheritance will do. Maybe we should buy a mansion with it. It seems my husband and his parents believe all the inheritance will be theirs. What an absurd family. The audacity of these people. Thinking they could take the home filled with precious memories of my father. And the wealth he worked so hard to build, had long surpassed my limit of endurance. I want a room that's spacious and sunny. I'd prefer a room close to the bathroom. There are plenty of bathrooms in such a big house. Despite my glaring in anger, they continued to make unreasonable demands. I vowed never to let things go their way. A few days later, I received a call from my uncle. Susan, you've had a hard time. I hope you're okay. My uncle was consoling me. Actually, there's something I need to discuss with you. Can you make some time? I agreed to meet him that night. Uncle, what's up? What did you want to talk about? There's something I absolutely need to tell you, Susan. I was surprised by what he told me. I couldn't believe such things were happening. Then, I told him everything about how my husband and in-laws were making unreasonable demands. What? They're saying that? Ridiculous people. I can't forgive them. My uncle was furious. I definitely don't want things to go their way. But it sounds like it'll be okay, with what you've said, Uncle. What should I do? How can I make them give up? Don't worry about anything, Susan. Leave everything to me. Actually. After hearing another part of my uncle's plan, I was even more surprised. Uncle, can we meet again tomorrow? I want Howard to hear this too. He's not a child anymore. Plus, it will be a good experience for him. I decided to proceed with the plan together with my uncle and Howard. The next day, Howard joined us, and the three of us had a meeting. For Howard, this involved his father and grandparents. I was anxious about how he really felt, but that was an unnecessary worry. That's an amazing story. I'm getting excited. I don't care about people who only see mom and grandpa as sources of money. Uncle, please go along with it. Howard was excited about the plan. So, we decided to proceed. The next day, I invited my in-laws to the house and had a discussion with my husband, Howard, and the six of us. About the conversation we had last time, about living in my family home. Were you serious? Of course. Are you finally getting serious? I've been tired of waiting. Immediately, my mother-in-law said, sooner is better. Living in such a mansion is like a dream. Then my father-in-law continued, after all, we paid the cancellation fee for that trip last time. You need to reimburse us for that. They had made the reservation without asking. I was astonished at how selfish these people could be. Then my mother-in-law said, we'll make back the money quickly. Don't rush. They were in a good mood because they believed everything was already theirs. I was used to it and knew it wouldn't go that way, so I could ignore them. But Howard, not used to their blatant money grabbing, seemed to tremble with anger. I patted Howard's shoulder to calm him down. Understood. Let's do that. I'm sure there's a lot to prepare, so mother-in-law. Please let us know when you decide on a moving date. And you should move on the same day. Howard and I will go first to start cleaning up the other house. I get that you go first, but why Howard too? It was an unusually sharp question from my husband. Can you prepare meals or do laundry? Howard is still a student. You can manage if it's just about you, right? Okay, I get it. I managed to deflect with a plausible excuse. However, my husband then said, why do we need to move to clean? You can do it during the day. You're not planning to take the best rooms for yourselves, are you? After all, you do know the house best. He was resisting over trivial matters. Don't worry, there are over 10 rooms in that mansion, right, Susan? My mother-in-law was in a good mood, thinking about living in that house. And unknowingly moved the conversation in a direction that helped us. I can't clean during workdays. We'll progress little by little in the evenings and on days off. Don't worry, you can choose your room first. Really? Well, that's okay, then. I managed to placate him. I thought to myself, just wait and see. I'll bring you all down soon. A month later, my husband informed me that the moving day was set. The decisive day was set, and I was getting excited. On that day, my husband and in-laws arrived at my family home with the moving truck. Howard and I were waiting at the front door. As my husband got out of the car, he said, "Hey, sorry to keep you waiting. So this is my house from today, huh? I've really moved up in the world." I ignored his tasteless joke as the in-laws looked excited. They had no idea they would soon be returning back. Then, the gate opened, and my uncle came out of the house. He stood silently with his arms crossed. Who are you? What are you doing in our house? It seemed my husband didn't even remember my uncle's face from the funeral. This is my uncle, my dad's brother. You met him at the funeral, remember? Oh.
Yeah.
That time. Thanks for. Embarrassed, he muttered something that sounded like thanks but faded out. What are you doing here? He stammered as he asked. The in-laws looked puzzled. Then my uncle asserted, this is my house. Is there a problem with me being in my own house? He spoke assertively from the start, overwhelming my husband and his parents. It seems you all have a big misunderstanding. Susan told me everything. The inheritance from my father was split between his two sons. My brother got the company, and I got the house. But I had already moved out and was living elsewhere with my family. I had no intention of moving back. Since my brother was taking over my father's business. He lived here, but the house stayed in my name. Just because my brother has passed doesn't mean this house belongs to Susan. It seemed they still didn't quite understand what my uncle was saying. Susan, what does this mean? Aren't we supposed to live here from today? My husband asked, seeming more perplexed than angry. I won't let that happen. You and your family have always been after my father's money. Demanding all sorts of nonsensical things even after he passed. Why should I hand over what my father worked? So hard to build to people like you who have done nothing? The audacity has limits. I won't let you have your way. Unusually, I raised my voice, which startled my husband and in-laws. However, my husband said, "What? How dare you speak to me like that?" Suddenly, Howard interjected. "Dad. You're cheating, aren't you?" I was the one who told Mom. Howard. What nonsense are you spouting now? My husband was visibly shaken by his son's confrontation. I saw it. I saw you looking cozy with a woman as you entered a hotel. Was that really me? Are you sure you didn't mistake someone else? Such a mistake is serious. My husband still wouldn't admit it. Dad, just stop. Just disappear from our lives and leave Mom alone. The rejection from his son seemed to really hit him hard. Yet, the in-laws' obsession with money was extreme. We don't know what the truth is, but if it's a divorce you want, go ahead. However, you'll have to pay us a hefty compensation. We've given up our apartment and even quit our jobs in anticipation of relaxing in that mansion from today on. Then, my mother-in-law added. That's right, Tony quit his job too. We have nowhere to live and no jobs. It's too late to turn us away now. You'll have to pay what's due. I was astounded. What? You quit your jobs? Both of you? Why would you quit your jobs just because you're changing homes? Are you idiots? Now I see just how much you were counting on my father's inheritance. The ones being unreasonable here are you. Their appalling behavior far exceeded my expectations. Either way, as his child, you're going to inherit something. You'll be paying me a substantial amount in compensation. That's when my uncle stepped in again. Listening to you, I can't believe the nonsense you come up with. There's no use talking sensibly with you. Let me be blunt, I am a lawyer. So what? What does that have to do with anything? Don't you understand? The divorce will go through. And you'll be the one paying compensation. It seemed they still couldn't grasp the situation. It's true that Howard seeing you cheating isn't enough evidence. But a month ago, Susan hired me as her lawyer to investigate your infidelity. My husband's face grew increasingly pale. Over the last month, you've met with a part-time worker from your workplace. Let's call her Ms. A, about 5 times. Roughly once a week. Always at the same hotel. Susan has told me about the pocket money you receive. It's hardly enough, is it? That's why you kept asking for more. What are you basing this on? Do you have proof? I'm saying this because I have proof. I have several photos. Shall I mention Ms. A's name right here? My husband looked like he had no choice but to admit it. You have been unfaithful. That's an undeniable fact. You won't get a dime from Susan, and instead, you'll be paying her compensation. Finally, it seemed my husband and his parents understood the situation. From now on, please communicate through the lawyer. And don't ever show your faces again. I said it firmly. My husband glared at me for a moment but quickly looked away. Then, they left the way they came. Thank you, Uncle. No problem. I was a bit more motivated since they were speaking ill of my brother. After this is settled, I'm going back to my family. Susan and Howard, you should live in this house. It would make both your father and my brother happy. It's a shame for such a good house to be empty. Thank you, we'll be happy to live here. I responded with a smile. Honestly, I was somewhat hoping for this outcome. Not the mansion itself, but the chance to live again in the house filled with memories of my father. Thank you, Uncle. This has been a really educational experience for me. Good job, Howard. Investigating your own parents' infidelity is quite an intense workplace experience. Study hard in college and you'll become a fine lawyer. After that, my uncle ensured the divorce was finalized properly. Howard and I started living in the house where my father had lived. The mansion might be too large for just the two of us. But being able to spend time surrounded by various memories made me very happy. Howard seemed to have learned a lot from my uncle and had a valuable experience. He is now even more dedicated to his studies, aiming to become a lawyer. It seems that after everything, Tony and his family have moved into an old apartment. Tony, given his age, apparently finds it hard to secure a new job. He contacted me just once. I need a loan. His tone was not entitled like before, but rather pleading. What? Didn't we cut ties? We're strangers now. I don't have money to lend to a stranger. Please, don't contact me again. I hung up the phone unilaterally. Since then, there has been no contact from my ex-husband. From what I hear from my uncle, Tony is getting by with odd jobs and part-time work. It seems he's been abandoned by his affair partner due to his poor financial situation. Moreover, there was never a planned trip to Florida. He had borrowed money behind my back. He must have said such things because he needed money to repay his debts. I don't know whose idea it was, but it was quite a scheme. Now, it doesn't really matter. I feel profoundly relieved to have cut ties. I feel as if the weight has been lifted off me, both physically and emotionally. Moving forward, I am determined to work hard at a job I love. For now, my immediate goal is to see Howard graduate from university successfully.